5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi and welcome. My name is Geeta Sidhu-Robb and this is Activate Yourself. As always, we have just the most interesting people turn up. And this is a lady that I've been trying to get on my show for such a long time because I didn't know who she was. And then when I found out, the more I found out about her, the more I admired her, what she's achieved, the age at which she's achieved it. And I love people that get something in their mind that they want to do and pursue it literally to the exclusion of all else. And I love that. Just love that about people. So we've got Anisa Butt with us today. Hi, Annie. How are you?
Hi, Geeta. I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm really, really looking forward to this. Thank you so much for making the time to join me. And we've been having some really fantastic connectivity issues. So we're going to just smile and pray that the gods of the internet work with us. Annie, you're just, I was saying to you before we came on that I would just sit and laugh about how creative you are. And I always love when people do pursue really alternative professions, but you started acting when you were 12?
Yeah, I did. I mean, not professionally at 12, but I tapped into it at 12. I kind of decided this is what I want to do. And yeah, never looked back, really.
So how does that work? How do you at 12 think, I just want to act? And what did your parents think?
You know, I don't know, actually. I just know I was really creative. I loved like art. I loved acting. I loved all that stuff, which I was very lucky that my school really encouraged, and I got to do it in the education system as well, which really helped. And then I was exposed to, I think my mum has this creative edge. You know, there was always music on in the house. There was movies playing. So I just felt really inspired by, you know, anything creative. And I think I just decided, we wrote these mini autobiographies when I was like 12.
That's so cute.
Yeah, and then at the end, the last page was like on career, and I still have it somewhere where I literally wrote like, this is what I want to do. So I was clearly very, very confident.
Yeah, you had your choice made.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the parents, I mean, at that point of time, I think my parents didn't really think too much about what I was going to do. And you know, as time went along, it was probably seen as this is just going to be a phase that she's going to forget about. And then never forgot about it.
Yeah, apparently bloody not. I was laughing about this because I have two deeply, deeply creative children and one who's not even slightly. And so I was saying before we came on that my youngest child has just been accepted to one of the most famous fashion schools in the world to do a degree. And I was saying, could you just tell your grandmother you're doing a law degree, darling? Just let's lie to your grandmother. And she was like, are you serious? I'm like, no, not really, but I wish you were. I mean, I don't want her to do a law degree. I'm an ex-lawyer and I hated it. So, but it's that thing of, I find it very interesting that this type of creativity that you have, that obviously my younger child has, is something that is so an inherent integral part of you. And maybe it's the time that we live in that it's allowed to flourish, because when I was growing up, people were just like, just get your grades, shut up about the creative, just get your grades, darling. And
yeah,
you know, so it enables you to be even more creative, which I just love so much.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it wasn't easy. I think, you know, there are still days now where my parents still think like, you know, what is this profession? Because my brother picked something very different. He's in finance, and
right.
there's definitely a stability in other jobs which you don't get in the art, and which is really hard to find. And I think no one wants to see their kids kind of like struggle or be in and out of work or be waiting or face rejection, you know, so a lot comes along with it.
No, it's so true. I agree. So you then went to Bollywood. How did you end up in Bollywood?
Well, I was really influenced by Hindi cinema growing up as well, but I never actually ever thought that I'd go to India and end up working. But I tested while I was at uni. I did a screen test in London for a Hindi film, and they flew me over to Bombay, to Mumbai.
And so the screen test, you were looking for screen tests. You were part of the acting scene.
Yeah. So I started auditioning, you know, for stuff in the UK and for stuff just yeah, just acting stuff. What I found was at that point of time was for South Asian artists, there wasn't this huge kind of demand or representation, which I think, you know, still today I think is lacking, but it's much better. And therefore, you know, there were a lot more of these opportunities for Hindi films, which would shoot in London. And this was actually a shoot where the producer happened to be in town, but it was for India. And they kind of did a short list, and I flew down, I did a look test, and I eventually was actually hired for that project, even though I never went on to do that project.
How old were you?
Which is a different story. I think I was 19.
So they hired you, but the project never got off the ground.
So the project happened, but this is the thing in our industry, things forever change. So I went out there, I did workshops, I was committed to the project, and then there was a narrative change. There were changes which happened on the production side, on the direction side, and on the vision. They were going down. And therefore, me and another actor who was involved in this project, unfortunately, we kind of had to step out.
Oh my God, after all that work.
Yeah, I know.
Is that common?
Well, you know what? At that time, I used to just think, oh, this would just happen in India. I mean, that was kind of my attitude, because I realized that the industry out there is it's so cutthroat and so constantly changing that even really a contract doesn't kind of stand for much. Whereas I thought, you know, the UK that way was more sort of stable, and, you know, the way the UK and America work. However, as I've learned to know over the years, it does happen everywhere. Things like that do happen, and it's so not in your control. And I think you have to kind of take it on the chin, really. And I like to say that I don't believe something's truly happening until I'm on set, and then it's like
in the middle of it. And even then, like, I have a lot of actors as clients, and there are people that tell me stories of how they've done the whole thing, they've paid for it, they've done everything, and then suddenly they're pulled from the publicity tour, and when they ask why, it's because they ended up on the cutting room floor. Like, they literally, not quite literally anymore, but that their part was edited out because it wasn't relevant in the final edition of and I'm just like, oh my God. I mean, what is that like?
Yeah. I can imagine. I mean, hence the very kind of turbulent nature of the business. It's a lot, but that first experience was a shocker for me. I mean, I was really heartbroken because it was a huge platform, huge project, lots of work. And it was that first experience of just feeling rejected, you know.
So how did you actually end up? Because you were actually in Ishaan, which was a very, very big deal.
It was a big deal. So I basically, after that experience, I kind of picked myself up, and I thought that, okay, I'm in India, in this new country, and I'm putting in all the work. And
because you grew up in England, right? You're Londoner, born and bred.
Yes. And I just thought maybe this is the door which is open, which I need to take advantage of. I should kind of have a look and see what's going on in India. So I got some pictures taken. I started doing auditions, and then the Disney opportunity came up, and then there was a series of auditions that I got through, and then was hired on this show, which kind of, I mean, I can compare it to like a High School Musical. So it was it did really, really well. We had like a huge following from kids. We went on like a mini tour. We had some clothes apparel.
Wow.
A music album, though we didn't sing, it was lip syncing. And it was a lot of fun, and it was a great learning experience.
So did you then go on and do more of that? Did that lead to a career in Bollywood?
So it led to me after the stint with Ishaan, which was about 2 years almost on and off of shooting for the show. So then testing for movies and auditioning for films and doing a bit of theatre and doing commercials and getting an agent, and all of that started happening. And I was back and forth to London, but I was predominantly spending the majority of my time in India. And I came back, and I graduated in between as well. So all of that happened, but yeah, I kind of wanted to stay where the opportunities were, and where
Yeah.
I felt like all this work has been done, all this groundwork has been done. I should now just, keep this momentum going.
So what happened?
So I got to be part of these amazing projects, and still up until pretty much pre-pandemic, I've been on and off working in India. However, the last couple of years, I've sort of reflected at the work that I've been doing. And I mean, every actor, every artist kind of desires to grow, right? You don't want to keep doing the same sort of roles. Even as an actor, you don't want to, it's hard to escape typecasting. You have
Oh
to.
my God, I can imagine. Like poor Sean Connery always claimed that Roger Moore, that James Bond killed him, didn't he?
Yeah, so you have to, there's an element of having to embrace it, but also I think you have to know when to say no to things. I really think that's a skill in itself as well.
Especially when you have no job certainty, then it's not even just a skill, it's courage.
It is, and that's the really tough thing about this business, is I think you really need to carry that self-belief through with you and be really confident as to what you can do. And I think I just started saying no to the kind of things which I felt like I'd done before. It was repetitive. I didn't think by doing it I was going to grow into something else or experience something new. And I really, really wanted to explore what's happening in the UK as well. And
were you out there alone?
I was to begin with.
Because you were so young.
Yeah, I mean, when Ishaan happened, my mum did come out with me for a while to just get me settled, like find a place to rent and all of these things.
Because in Mumbai.
In Mumbai, and it was. I mean, it was never a cultural shock, because I'm British Asian myself and grew up watching Hindi films. But yes, there's a very different way of working, a very different work culture. The language is different. So navigating all of these things was really challenging. I think the first year was tricky.
I think because I've noticed that, because most people, I always joke, because I'm from Africa, that everybody who I know that's white has spent more time in India than I have, because I've been to India maybe 3 times in my life. But I think people don't understand that you've gone to India, but you've gone as a British Asian, and that it's actually a completely different breed of person. Because like when you're walking down the street and I'm looking at Asians, I can tell you an Asian that comes from Africa, an Asian that's British, and an Asian that's from India. I can 100% tell you the difference, because we look different, we sound different, we dress differently. So I mean, I wonder, because you wouldn't have been given leeway, because you would have been expected to fit in, but it would have been different for you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with me, I mean, I always say like I'm ethnically ambiguous, because truly I don't know what I am. I mean, I say I'm British Asian, but from a casting perspective, with casting directors, they want you to solve a problem a lot of the time. But when you're entering a different industry in a different country, of course, a lot of the writing, it's written for characters which are born in that country.
Yeah.
And when you're not, you're kind of trying to assimilate and fit into something which you're not inherently.
Yeah.
So there's another challenge on top of all of that.
Yeah, and I think that's not well understood. I think that it's not, because I remember walking around India and people knowing I was foreign, and it annoyed the crap out of me, because I was just like, look, isn't this supposed to be the motherland? And it really was not the motherland, let me tell you, because they just knew that you weren't from there, and you weren't brought up like that, and you weren't, and especially where I think it comes to the feminine model of who we are, that you would have been brought up quite differently. To the way women are still being brought up in India, because in India, if you're wealthy, you have a slightly different outlook on the way that you're brought up as a woman, but the majority of the country isn't and hasn't and doesn't.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I mean, the work ethic is very different, like mentality everywhere is so different. Adjusting to that, I mean, small things like, I know where the saying Indian timing comes from, because it's just, you know, that there definitely isn't much punctuality, and I'm kind of like a very punctual person, so that still irritates me like
Must have
anything.
driven you mad.
It's still one of those things I can't quite get my head around. So that, yeah, there was a lot which came with the experience, and a lot of adjusting and compromising, you know.
Yeah, but I mean a proper growth experience as well, because you basically emigrated.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I mean, no regrets, because definitely like learned another language. I was actually, our mother tongue is Punjabi, but when I went out there, I had to learn Hindi.
Yeah, and fluent Hindi.
And yeah, pretty fluent Hindi, and still now, like it's crazy. I'm really glad, because I have that now bilingual ability, but it is a skill. Yeah, it's a skill that I'm still trying to, hone.
Yeah, no, but it's very true, because like our mother tongue is also Punjabi, but people don't understand that when a film is made in Hindi and you're watching it, because I don't anymore watch Hindi films, but I did a lot of it growing up. But it's actually a completely different language you're watching. It's like being French and watching Spanish. It's a completely, so that it's just, I want to point out, because I think people who are listening are not aware, because you're an Indian that went to India, and yet there are so many nuances in there of what you actually had to overcome and struggle with. You struggled culturally, you struggled completely, because it's a new language that you had to learn and work in, right? Yeah. Whereas if you said you were going to Japan and you were learning the cultures and the malls and the language, you'd be like, oh my God, wow, well done. But it's exactly the same. And you assimilated at a really young age into a different culture, different language, different community. So I'm really impressed. I mean, that's some really kudos there.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, it's definitely a lot, but it did teach me a lot, and I still like would love to keep doing work out there, if interesting projects do come along and I have that opportunity. So I'm not shutting a door there, but I think I would just like to explore what's happening in the UK as well.
So what happened? Yeah, what happened then with the pandemic? Because that must have just killed it.
Yeah, I mean, it did actually. It was crazy, because I was out in Mumbai when the pandemic first hit. Yeah, I literally flew out Feb 2020 for a couple of screen tests. So I was just doing some screen tests for 2 projects which were about to go on floor, and literally the next thing you know, we're in lockdown, and international flights have shut.
Oh my God, what did you do? Did you get stuck there?
I was there. I mean, luckily India has become like second home. I've got friends, I've got a community there. I had a place to stay. It wasn't the end of the world, but I usually am on a work visa, so my visa was valid till June. And initially, we didn't even know the nature of this virus. I mean,
you didn't know how long it'll be locked down for.
No, and I was really worried that it would be airborne. At that point, there were a lot of conversations that you can catch it when you're flying. So I decided to just stay put and wait, and that waiting kind of became almost June, and international flights still had not opened. And Air India were doing these evacuation flights, which you could buy if you were a British citizen to go back to the UK. So my visa was running out, and I was just like, I'm gonna have to
evacuate. Who the hell knew you were evacuated? Think of those poor Afghanis that we're sitting watching now.
Oh gosh, yeah.
It's a whole new meaning, isn't it? Wow.
It is a whole new meaning. I mean, yeah, exactly. I wouldn't really have called it an evacuation flight, but it was really bizarre actually, because there was no in-flight entertainment. You were not allowed, no food was being served. There were these bags.
That's a long flight.
Yeah, there were these bags of dry snacks on the seat, and of course you could carry food if you wanted to. You had to wear the PPE kit, and it literally kind of felt very, it was a bit like
scary.
A prison flight. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so insane. So what happened then? So you come back here, and I mean, I have a lot of my clients are in the entertainment industry, and I know that this has been a really, really difficult time, and particularly because Well, because it's the emotional and mental shift to being a different kind of performer if you're a performer and what you do. And so for you, you went down different routes like you've done. I want to talk about your podcast and I want to talk about the poetry. Talk to me about which came first. Was it the podcast that came first?
Yeah, the podcast started a couple of years ago. So I think literally 2019. A friend had just suggested, because I was doing lots of I was doing lots of interviews and lots of stuff was going on, and they were just like, you should start a podcast. And I kind of dabbled in the idea, and I thought, I don't know if it's my thing, it's going to take a lot of work. And they were just like, no, it's pretty simple, it's easier than you think. And I just started it, and I got to have really interesting conversations with people around the globe like yourself. And
yes, that's how we met. Yeah.
Exactly. No, it's been such a brilliant, and it was, in a way, it was such a blessing to have that over the pandemic, because
yes,
I was still connecting with people across the globe, and we were getting to have these amazing conversations about their journeys. And it's really like the central theme of the podcast is perseverance, and how, despite life's adversity, how people push through. And it's not just about, the rich and famous, it's about all kinds of people in different walks of life. So I feel really grateful to have that and to have made so many new connections, for sure.
So that's cool. What's the podcast called?
So the podcast is called Unplug with Annie. It is on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. And the link is, I'll definitely
it's definitely going to be below in the episode notes.
Yeah.
And then, so talk to me about poetry, because nobody I know, I was going to say people don't, and then I was like, let me reframe that. Nobody I know got up and thought, I'll just write some poetry. Poetry is almost that thing that you do at school. It's almost the thing that you have to learn because you did English lit. Right. Poetry is not necessarily is not part of what one's everyday life is about. So how did that come about?
Yeah, again, I started writing poetry really young, when I was about 12, 13. And I just, I've got like folders with bits of paper, and just like I've been writing. And it just kind of always accumulated. I would share it here and there, while I was at school on Facebook, or, with people. And my mum always used to say, oh, you should write a poetry book. And so many people over time used to, comment on the poems. And I figured, when I sat down to write my kind of goals for 2021, I was just like, you know what, I'm going to publish a poetry book this year. I'm going to use the time and just accumulate all the poems, write some new ones, and get it out into the world.
So this was a goal of this year.
Yeah, it was a goal.
Actually, it's September, isn't it? But yeah.
So I wanted to sort of publish by around May, which then became June. So the book, I have the book actually. I have the book here.
Let me see.
It's called
I love that. Such a pretty cover.
Thank you. So it's available now on Amazon. It's essentially an anthology of poems split into 3 sections, which is life, love, and faith, which are essentially like the 3 pillars that I talk about. And and I've written a little bit about why I've written the book, and a little bit about each section, and then it's followed by poems like pertaining to that theme. So I
love that you wrote this.
Poetry is compassion.
Yeah, I love that you wrote that the dictionary definition of hope is desire accompanied by expectation of or belief in fulfillment. And I love that. That's just so clever, because Rupi Kaur is somebody that I've followed for a long time, and I've absolutely loved, her stuff, and again, Maya Angelou. So there's a lot of things there, but I why would you write in verse instead of it as a novel, for example? Why would you write poetry and not a book?
I think from a very young age, I didn't consider myself to be very confident when I was young. And I think writing became this form of like self-expression and just being, it was quite cathartic for me. And somehow it just felt, I don't like to say easy, but it just felt very natural and organic. I didn't have to force the process. And, whenever I feel inspired, and I could be doing anything, I could literally like be in a car or, whatever it is, in the shower or something. And if there's this idea which just strikes me, I know I can just, pick up my phone and just jot it down. And it's weird. I just kind of think in rhyme. And
yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah, and I guess it just
do you have are your poems, because I've not read this, I've not read Hope, so did you self-publish?
I did. I decided to go down the self-publishing route because I spoke to a few colleagues of mine who I know also write poetry, and a couple of them have been represented, and they've gone through a publishing house. However, a lot of them said that if they were to look back on that experience, they really would have self-published to begin with.
Why?
I think because creatively they have more control over their work. Yeah. And also a lot of publishers take a big chunk out of what you would earn,
and also take a year to bring it out, and especially in the way life is changing at the moment, that's a long time to not have your work up.
Exactly. And even if you send it out, to gain interest from a publisher, that process can take up to like 4 or 5 months.
Totally. Do you have a short poem you could read to us? I didn't even tell you I was going to do this. Are your poems long?
I do. Some of them are long, some of them are short. I can do a quick short spoken word one if you like.
Yeah, go girl.
Yeah. Okay, so this little poem's called Free, and it's just about the willingness the want, I should say, to be a child again, and just to be playful and free. Yeah, I'm learning, trying to be discerning, because I'm yearning to do better, be better, feel better, play more, because that's what we're here for. Not get stuck in our heads and our minds, because it binds us, restricts us, constricts us. And art is supposed to be free. Be whatever you want to be, like the birds and the bees and the falling of leaves. Just let go, surrender, not have an agenda. It's so good to be learning again. Being curious, like when I was 10, and I didn't care about them comments and opinions or anything I didn't believe in, because it was all possibility, tranquility. Thank heavens for that time. It was so sublime. I want to be free again. Free like the waves in the sea, free flowing, free from controlling anything around me or letting it astound me. Free.
I love that.
Thank you.
That was so good. I love that. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to order that for my daughter, my elder daughter.
Oh,
that's what I'm going to do.
Please do. I mean, it is available on Kindle and paperback on Amazon, but there are some little lovely illustrations which a dear friend of mine has hand illustrated, so it's lovely to have a paperback copy.
It's so nice, right? I remember when my first book came out, I wanted to be able to hold it and touch it. Yeah. Oh, I love that, Annie. Thank you so much. So the book is called Hope, and you've got it on Amazon. It's on sale on Amazon.
It's on sale.
And it's under Anisa Butt, which the spelling we'll find down below, but it's Anisa Butt. To find you. And I love that. Now, what do you plan for, although it's obviously been a very bloody busy year for you, what do you plan for the rest of the year? What do you see?
So I'm writing a script for the first time at the moment. So I'm trying to develop a screenplay for a short, which I do want to get made this year. So I'm busy working on that and putting that all together, which is taking all my time currently. But at the moment, I am represented in the UK as well. I do have an agent here. So acting is always on the agenda. And I recently did a documentary short, which was actually about depression and exploring, you know, mental health, which I'm really passionate about as well. So I'm dabbling in a few things. And yeah, I'm claiming an exciting rest of year now that things are open. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
well, I wish you the very best of luck. And I'm so grateful that you came on, because this show is all about people finding and activating the best parts of themselves. And you're clearly doing that almost all the time as you go. And I like that. You just keep turning. I've always turned corners, because I'm like, I wonder what's next. I don't understand why you would stay in one place, and I never will. And I don't. My daughter was asking me something today, and she said, why didn't you do this? And I said, I don't like being told what to do.
Yeah.
It really just upsets me. Just don't like being told what to do. And she was laughing, and she was like, you can't blame me then. I'm like, I just don't like being told. And so I love that's how you define yourself. And I think that that's very generational, because there's a place where my generation didn't know that, and I wanted it, and that's what I made for myself. And I love being able to see you owning that, and it's just natural for you. So I'm super happy about it.
No, thank you for having me. It was such a great conversation, and yeah, I know that you're constantly up to something or the other, and wonderful as well, so I completely relate to that. But yeah, thanks for having me on.
Such a pleasure. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for listening. This was Activate Yourself. My name is Geeta Sidhu-Robb. I really appreciate you being here, and we'll be with you again soon.